I'm Close Serentine. Thank you for joining me for Edible and Medicinal Treasures of the Wildwood. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Cantharellus, more commonly known as the Chanterelle. Before me you see still in the soil the Chanterelle as it commonly appears in Nova Scotia. Chanterelles, you can see, are all around. In Nova Scotia, they commonly appear growing among softwoods, where there are also hardwoods nearby. And here I'm surrounded by red and white spruces, and there's the odd wild apple tree, poplar tree, and birch tree hereabouts. Chanterelles, like its cousin the Cantharellus, is a golden mushroom, at least this common version of it. It's a small to medium-sized mushroom. This is a typically sized one, though they are known to grow sometimes to as large as a kilogram or a couple of pounds. I found one like that once just last year, and that's the only one I have ever found that came close to so large. This is an older example of one. Its colors are a bit darker, but Chanterelles can be identified by their roughly uniform golden color. If they happen to be one of the red variants of Chanterelles, it'll be roughly red. If they happen to be one of the blacks, like the black trumpet, it'll be roughly black. There's even a pale, almost white version of the Chanterelle, and again, it has a uniform color. Most distinctive about the Chanterelles, they have the somewhat misshapen caps. They often take on a concave shape like this, though not always. The gills of the Chanterelle are false gills, which means if you look carefully, you can see they practically look like they have been melted into the cap. They are part of the cap. True gills, which you see under many capped mushrooms, you can pick away with your finger quite easily. These mushrooms, you could scrape them off, but you'd actually be digging right into the cap, and with a little practice that becomes very evident. Chanterelles often have a lovely fruity fragrance, described among many mushroom harvesters such as myself as apricotish. Sometimes, however, they don't. I've noticed in particular the Nova Scotian mushrooms have a more subtle fragrance. One may be quite strong in its mushroom fragrance, and then I might harvest a dozen that don't have the flavor very strongly. However, if I put them into a bag, like this black cloth bag I have beside me to gather mushrooms today, as they accumulate in there, the flavor will build, or the fragrance will build. The fragrance does tend to fade, given some time, and in fact the fragrance will often fade, and then the Chanterelle will take on much more of a typical mushroomy fragrance, like you would experience from the common store-bought little button mushroom that you see at grocery stores, whose proper name is Agaricus Bisporus. This is one of the best and most delectable mushrooms. It has a lovely flavor and a lovely texture and a lovely fragrance, and its reputation as a superb edible mushroom is well earned. Chanterelles often have unusual shapes or can even grow fused together. The most dangerous Chanterelle lookalike is the jack-o'-lantern. It's not deadly, but if you eat it, you will get something like a severe gastrointestinal virus that will haunt you for a couple of days, and you'll remember it for life, and you won't make that mistake again. Jack-o'-lanterns are notorious for growing gregariously, very close together, often dozens in a single location. Chanterelles are gregarious. They will tend to grow in loose clusters, like you see here, but not piled one on top of the other. However, sometimes you see an unusual Chanterelle like this. Here you can actually see there are two, possibly three, and they grew very close together and essentially fused together. It's not unheard of. In fact, it's not even all that unusual among Chanterelles, as they all grow from the same underground mycelium, and these are essentially the same fruiting body of that mycelium. Here is an almost perfect Chanterelle, and very, very typical of the species. The stipes, the stems sometimes go straight down, but this one was growing a bit sideways around the stick. You can see in this example the false gills practically seeming like they were carved or scratched out of the cap. We have the distinctive, uniform golden color. It's a bit darker gold on the cap, but overall the entire mushroom is golden. If you were to cut open a Chanterelle, you would see that it has a distinctive white flesh. A nice, lovely, firm flesh that holds its texture while cooking. I'm going to cut this with an open to demonstrate. Notice the lovely white flesh inside. It's solid, it's not hollow. That's important for identification. Uniform golden yellow, white flesh on the inside. This is the sign that you have indeed a lovely and delicious chanterelle. So the chanterelle is not slimy or tacky or gelatinous. It often has a bit of a cool, damp feeling as it grows in the forest. But the flesh is most noteworthy as being firm. It's not hard, it's not tough, but it's firm. I would describe it more like rubbery. And it maintains this pleasant texture even when being cooked. It is an ideal and delectable table mushroom. They are easily prepared for storage. They can be dehydrated. There is a process called skillet or heat drying, which I'll demonstrate one of these days. It's very simple. You dice up the mushrooms, put them in a pan with a little oil, and cook them slowly. You just grill them for 15-20 minutes, and the moisture will be leached out of the mushrooms as they are grilled, and it reduces their size considerably, as well as the moisture content, at which point they can be frozen without jeopardizing their lovely texture. One of the reasons that chanterelles are prized is for their texture, so you really don't want to ruin the texture by just throwing them in the fridge and freezing them. If you do that, they will turn into a gelatin, and they will still have a chanterelle flavor, and you can have them soups and such, but you would not want to use them in dishes as ordinary mushrooms.